Hello everyone and welcome. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. You hatch a great product idea that is a real problem solver, but you are afraid to take it any further as you are uncertain about implementing it in a low cost-effective way. But it shouldn't be like that any longer. After this webinar, you will realize how lean product development can give wings to your product idea at a rock bottom cost. Hi everyone, I am Preeti Philip from Bridge Global. Bridge is a leading provider of IT solutions headquartered in the Netherlands. We offer superior software solutions to clients across the globe. Today, we are presenting lean product development above and beyond. The key presenters are Lekha Philip and Robert Jan Singh. Lekha Philip, the COO of Bridge Global, is a passionate lean advocate. She has over 10 years of experience in the service industry, working with client relationships, process management, and team building. She is also a member and contributor to a lot of agile communities. Robert is a renowned entrepreneur and an experienced product guy. He has vast experience in building products and companies from zero. He has helped local and distributed teams with highly diverse backgrounds. Now, just a little housekeeping before we start. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel. I'll bring them up during the Q&A session at the end. Now, let's start our session. We'll turn the time over to Lekha now. Lekha, I welcome you to the show. It's all yours now.
Thank you, Preeti. Thank you, Preeti, for the introduction, and a warm welcome to everyone who's attending this webinar. So this webinar is about lean product development above and beyond. And me and Robert will be taking you on this journey to try and explain what lean is all about and also the experience in having lean as a method for developing products. So let's look at this scenario. The very reason why we're looking into different methodologies, different solutions to build our products a different way is because of what's happening around us. We see that a lot of product ideas start and stop midway. 9 out of 10 startups fail. And if no one wants your product, your company is not going to succeed. Now, the main question you need to be asking yourself is, what are you building? Are you building something that your customer requires, or are you building something that you think is a perfect idea? So let's try and go through the principles of lean and how you can adapt the same to when you are building your idea or your product. And let's start away with that. So the lean philosophy, when we look at lean in Google, especially about the whole thing about lean is to fail early and succeed sooner. So failing is something that we do not like at all, but then it's always good to fail early on in the business than to really spend a lot of time and energy and money and then realize later on that the product that you're building is not exactly what the customer needs. So the whole goal of the lean value, the lean philosophy, is to understand what the value is, or what is it that your customer sees as a value. So the goal of lean is to deliver the maximum customer value in the shortest time while providing the highest possible quality. So quality is not something you will be compromising when you adopt lean. What happens over here is we let go of all the wastage that could come up when we are not going lean and focus only on what will deliver us the goal of lean. And a good reason to go lean is now technology has enhanced so much that there's a lot of global competition. Now, a decade back, you would see that brand loyalty was something that customers used to rely on, or we used to rely on brand loyalty. Customers often had brand loyalty in their mind before they even thought of switching to another product. But right now, the scenario is not so. There are a lot of competitors in the market, and customers switch to better options in a blink of an eye. So we need to be really on top of things when it comes to what the customer needs. Just two examples. These two are taken a lot as examples, Nokia and Kodak. When they entered the market, they were masters of their own, but then in time, they could not keep up with the competition. So again, a glance of all those big names that were there did make an impact in the initial time, but then it kind of faded away and we're going to see what happened. So the lean principles, we have 5 of them over here. These are the principles that we usually take into account when we start on an idea of ours. So the first one is what we explained right now, which is the value, what the customer wants. The value stream is when you would be taking off the waste activities. When I say waste, it's the unrequired activities that would not lead you to the value. The third one is to actually establish the flow, which is the development process wherein you try and get the first release out into the market. The fourth one is pull, where you get feedback from the market and go back again to the flow. Fifth one is perfection, where you keep on going on with this feedback loop. You get the feedback, you build, put into the market, keep enhancing, keep perfecting the same. Lean, again, this is what I just mentioned before, is what the customer is willing to pay for, if we are going to put it in very, very simple terms. And the stream, value stream, when we keep the value as reference, we're going to identify all the activities and remove those are not required. Now, these are some of the guidelines and each one of us needs to have in our mind when we start on a journey with an idea of ours. The idea we have should serve at least one specific audience. And the idea that we have should address one key problem. You should be solving some problem over there, one key problem. Identify that. When it is an MVP, it should also have a well-designed user experience. When it is minimum viable, it should also be attractive for the customers. So do make a point that you have a well-designed user experience. And when you go on the lean journey, it's very important that you have something that you can easily validate, build, and launch as quick as possible. Now let's look at the MVP mountain. Now these are the steps that we're going to follow before we try and validate our product idea and try and start building on the same. So we have quite a few steps over here. At the bottom we have the idea. The first step in the ladder is the sniff test. Now let's look at what the sniff test is all about. We have 5 factors coming under the sniff test: payment, matching fit, sustainability, path to validation, and unfair advantages. Now we're going to take each one of them and look at it in detail. And while I do the sniff test along with you guys, we're going to actually work with a sample idea, an actual existing idea. The source is Medium Magazine Online, and the author is Ambrose. Now what he did is he had this idea of converting written articles to podcast so that his customers could listen to the articles rather than read them. Now, with the idea, with this idea, the author thought that he would follow the lean process sniff test to try and validate the idea before he actually started working on the same. So the first one in the sniff test is the payment, pain to payment. Now you're asking your customer, you need to know from your customer, how big a problem are you solving? Are they ready to pay for the same? So you have an idea and you need to answer these questions. Now, is that idea a solution to the idea nice to have? Is it a should have solution, a must have, and a can't live without? So these are the 4 categories that you should try and put your idea into. So it will let you know how much of a pain to payment, how much is a customer willing to actually pay for your idea. Now let's take a look at what the author came up with on his podcast idea for the pain to payment. Now remember, this is under the sniff test. So the assumption that the author had was that the idea was a nice to have feature. So there's also a scoring that he did for all the different factors under the pain, the pain of payment. So the score that he gave for this was 5 out of 10 because it was just nice to have and not a must have. The next one on the sniff test is matching fit. Now this is quite easy. Under matching fit, you're asking yourself this question: are you willing to put in efforts for this for a long time? Now in the initial period, you will have a lot of energy and enthusiasm to take this on forward. But will you have the same on a long journey? So ask yourself this question. And then we have sustainability again under sniff test. How long do you think your idea is going to survive? It might be unique when you put it into the market right away, but how long do you think it's going to survive? Let's take a look at what the author put in for his podcast idea. So what he says is the matching fit, of course, is easy for him to answer, and he scored a 9 out of 10. And for sustainability, he assumes that the idea is very easy to copy. The long-term sustainability of the idea is quite low, so he scored that 3 out of 10. You can do the same for the ideas that you have. Moving on to the last two factors of the sniff test. Path to validation. Now, this is how easy can you validate your idea? Is your idea presentable as a prototype? Is it presentable in a good way? Can it be really presented so that it can be validated? And if so, you need to list out the methods that you would use to validate your idea. Does your idea have an unfair advantage over your competition? What is unique about your idea? List that out. Coming to the author again, what he did for the path to validation was he scored it 8 out of 10 because he thinks that it is a straightforward idea, and the path to validation for the idea is quite simple from his point of view. And for the unfair advantage, the score is quite low. It's 4 out of 10. This idea, of course, might not be there right now in the market, but then there's a lot of, but he does have a close network of bloggers who would form an initial audience to which he could put in his MVP. So that's just one advantage that he sees, but that's not too much to score on. This is what you do. There's a hypothesis statement that you can put your product idea under into the sniff test. Now we believe that there is a structure for the hypothesis statement, which is we believe that doing this, which is your idea for these people, which is your audience, will achieve the outcome that you think. And you'll know this is true when you see the market feedback or what it is that you think is a factor that would make it a success. So fill this out. And let's look at what the author said for his hypothesis. I believe that bloggers will want to turn their articles into a podcast because they would want to use it as a lead magnet to generate more traffic to their website, and that they're too busy to make a podcast. So this was the hypothesis that he made. Before you move on from the sniff test, list out all the assumptions that you have for your product. And when you make your first release, MVP release, come back to the list of assumptions and go through them. These were the 4 assumptions that the author did for his idea, that the readers would rather listen to audio than read it, that bloggers would want a lead magnet to generate more traffic. He also had a risky assumption that bloggers would actually pay money for the solution, and there's nothing else out there that does this right now. Now, after the sniff test, we're moving on to the next rung on the ladder, which is competitive analysis. Now, any idea, any product that hits the market will have a competition, if not today, tomorrow. So you should make a good analysis of all your existing or future possible competition so that you can place yourself in the market in the right way. Now, when you make the comparison, what can you make it against? So these are just a few examples of categorizations that you can place the competition that you see around you. List out the companies that you see or the products that you see or the apps that you see as your competition. Put in the size, the number of downloads, the number of customer base that they have. Put in the popularity of the app. You would find that in the app stores. What is the popularity of the competition apps that you have? What are the different marketing strategies that they adopt in their marketing strategy? What is the professionalism? Or when you say professionalism, that's more towards the customer experience or user interface. Do they have a good one? List out all of them so that you know where you can put your edge into the product idea that you have. So competitive analysis is very important before you take the next step to see how unique your idea is, and even if not unique, how much of a standing your idea will have in the market. Customer interviews. Now we have the sniff test, we have the competitive analysis, and then we have the customer interviews, which is the third rung in the ladder. When we are but what we're doing right now is we are validating your idea. So by the time you're done with the competitive analysis, you move to the customer interviews, where you go face to face with customers. You ask them what is it that they do right now as a solution for the product idea that you have. You might have an idea that solves a particular problem. What is it that they use as an alternative right now? Explain the features of your solution. If possible, demo a prototype if you have one with you. Ask them a direct question as to how much, or if you do have an amount that you've placed on your product, ask them directly, would you be willing to pay this for this product? It's very important because you will get an upfront idea about how they see for the pain to payment. Very important, before you end the interviews with your customer, ask for the contacts of their friends or colleagues so that you can keep building on the circle of audience that you have. And this first circle of audience would be the people that you would give in your MVP release for feedback. So customer interviews is a very important part of this rung of validation. This is a graph that would give you an idea on what to do to get more of an evidence that your product idea is good. Now, there are different quadrants to it. There are quadrants where you need to use large resources, but that it will give you strong evidence. So that's your liking on, as to what kind of different methodologies you need to use to get the right validation for your product idea. Now, this is a very important question. Now, by the time you reach the different rungs of the MVP ladder, you would have a notion on where your idea stands. Some would think that the idea that they have is good enough that they put it up for a pre-selling option where customers make a pre-purchase on it, place orders, and it's very good this way because you see the traction that you have for your product. You can see upfront how many customers are willing to pay for your product and then go ahead and build a version. Or you can directly go ahead and start building on the MVP and then release it in the market for payments. Once you're done with the value and the value stream, the next steps in the lean principles are the flow and pull. Now, for the flow, like we said before, this is to ensure that there is a development going on so that you have the value coming out in the market. So agile methodologies is a good choice to keep a smooth flow of development of your MVP. So any of the agile methodologies is good enough. And after you create the flow, there is the pull. Now, pull is nothing but the feedback that you get from the customers. Each time you put in an MVP out in the market, you get feedback from the customer. You take that information, put it back into your development cycle, go back and brush it up again, come back to the market again for feedback. Lean, where you establish pull. This is the whole feedback loop where you take feedback from customer reviews. You learn from them, you design accordingly, you build accordingly, ship them and take feedback again. So in this process, you might see a lot of activities or features that you avoid, keeping in tune with the customer feedback that you get. So remember that the customer opinions, requirements, needs keeps changing every time. So this is very important that you maintain the feedback loop and keep building on your product. Joint creation of MVP would be this. This is all about lean, where you learn, build, measure, and continue with the cycle until you are sure that the product that you release into the market is what the customer wants and what the customer is willing to pay for. We know that there are a lot of brands, a lot of companies out there that are using lean and very successfully using lean. And these are just a few examples where you see that Toyota, Intel, Ford, all of they have the stories of their own where they have seen success after adopting lean principles. When you do decide to embark on the journey of lean, these are some very important points that you should keep in mind. So focus on the business models and not only on your product. So yes, you do have a product idea. Always make sure that you have an idea on what your business model is. Now, when I say business model, let's say, for example, Amazon. Amazon is a leader in e-commerce, but they really spend their time on their business model is about strong customer service commitment. Now, even while doing strong customer service commitment, they might lose out money somewhere, but that's not what they're focusing on. They focus on customer service commitment. Engage customers continuously. So in this world, like I said before, successful companies will have one thing in common, an exceptional understanding of customer behaviors and needs. This is what is going to keep you apart from every other product out there. More in tune with the customers you are, the more better your product would get. So if you combine, let's see, lean is what we just discussed about to gather insights of assumptions on what to build. So if you follow the lean model of working, you build exactly what the customer asks for. If you couple that with design thinking, now design thinking is nothing but having a user interface so that you can collect customer behaviors, and on top of that, agile methodology to get the flow into the system of lean development. So if you combine all of these three together, you would be building a really good product what the customer actually needs, and you're building it with very minimum time, budget, and energy. So thinking lean continuously is very, very important here. So this is how we help you to identify. You need to validate. We help you to identify and validate your app idea. Focus on what the user needs. We help you to identify how to never distract from your app goal. App goal is nothing but what the customer needs at the end. And follow the lean development process. Thank you. I hope this session has given you an insight into how the lean principles and what are the lean principles and how they can help you moving forward when you do embark on the journey of lean. Thank you very much.
That was wonderful, Lekha. Thank you so much for giving valuable understanding on lean product development. Now I am welcoming Robert for sharing more insights on the same.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, I think everybody can see my screen now. Thanks for that. Okay, so I want to share a few of my experiences with everybody attending. I think the introduction and the explanation about lean is extremely valuable, and I wish I had a bit more of this information earlier on, because I might have made different choices, different mistakes perhaps, if I was as knowledgeable as you are right now after the previous presentation. Well, a few of my experiences equals the learnings that I took from them. As you can see here, I did co-found a few different companies with different levels of success. But I think the most important lessons I've learned, I want to share with you today, and hopefully you'll have some use out of it. Okay, so first I'm going to start with Didoo. That's pretty much some time ago. Co-founded this in 2010. The idea about the product was gift suggestions for Facebook friends. Based on the likes that somebody had, we would push this. So if somebody had a friend, you could get his likes. We would push this to the Amazon recommendation engine, and then give gift suggestions if somebody's birthday was coming up or something. Well, that was the idea. As you can see, co-founded 2010. The MVP was developed. It wasn't that. I don't think it's the best example of an MVP. That's why I put it between the quotes. So we spent 500 hours in total, just to give you a bit of an estimation of how much time was involved. And the learnings I had in this case actually is that a one-off can be a miss. Somebody, the CEO of this company, or actually the one that had the idea, came to me, and he had a very clear idea what he wanted to build, and we did actually. But it didn't turn out to be the success that we both wanted. It just was a dream, and that doesn't mean it's necessarily a business. There were no face-to-face interviews done at this point, so I just think we didn't do a very good job at this point. The timing might have been too early. I mean, 8 years ago, maybe almost 9 years ago, likes weren't that popular. Actually, it was a bit weird. Facebook apps weren't common. Recommendation engine from Amazon wasn't that good back then. So those are technical things, or maybe things that might have influenced it. But I also believe it wasn't the passion of the person that came to me and wanted to build this product. We just didn't think of this as a company that we'd continue. So there just wasn't enough passion. The company didn't launch actually, so we tried to, but ultimately we didn't. We killed it quite fast. And the next one, very interesting, Songflow. For a small amount of money, artists without a record label could upload their music, and we would distribute the music to Amazon, Tidal, Spotify, iTunes, different stores. Flat fee, €5 or $6 per song per year. Co-founded this in 2011. Again, an MVP, or something that should have been an MVP, was developed. 3,250 hours were spent, so you can see that's really a lot. The 20 sprints took 1 year from zero to launch of this MVP. or what should have been the MVP. We did grow to 1,000 artists 3 months after this launch. And actually the launch is something that I think doesn't really align with the ideas about lean. I think you should try to get feedback, because it's super valuable. You should get this from day one. So if you plan on having a launch, then basically you're just not, up until this point, taking enough feedback. So I think that's something you should realize. From day one, you should try to be live. You should try to get feedback, because it will help you build a better business. We did win the Accenture Innovation Award, so that was really nice. What I did learn in this case, development was not lean enough. It definitely, we built so much. We could have done this much faster. We could have made better choices if we listened to different parties involved much more early. Then the business model itself was not sustainable, and it took 6 years to figure this out. It's a famous quote: "Kill your darlings," from William Faulkner, a writer and Nobel Prize winner. I think it's very important to sometimes realize that whatever you're doing, you'll have to let go and to do something else. I think it's just something. If something isn't working, you should try to make it work. If it doesn't work, move on and figure out what does work. But ultimately, why this company didn't succeed in becoming a very big platform, I believe, was because the market changed. And there was no entrepreneurial focus. I was as a minority shareholder, and the major shareholder was focusing on different things during this period. And when the market changed, when there were competitors coming up, simply we didn't have a proper reaction to this, and we just lost our business to competitors. So I think that's what ultimately made us into a moderate success, but not a very big success. We did ultimately have 10,000 artists, and it's very nice, and I really enjoyed being part of the team. Learned a lot, but it wasn't sustainable ultimately. It's closing down right now.
Robert, I am
Yep.
sorry to interrupt. One of our attendees is not able to view the slide, it seems. So, Elzan, are you able to? I hope you are able to see it now. I hope it's visible now.
I can try to reshare.
Okay, Elzan, can you please put a chat here if it's visible to you? Okay, thank you, Robert. You can carry on. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no problem. All right, so next to the next adventure, I guess. So that was Songflow. Then the next one is PA Collective, which I didn't co-found, but I was involved in from the beginning on. And that's basically a personal assistant services per 15 minutes. So if you have a dry cleaning that you need to pick up, or if you need to have keys copied, or the mailman is delivering a package which somebody should accept, those kinds of things could have been done per 15 minutes as a service. And right now with Gojek and different competitors, these things are made in a different way. So I think that we were onto something back then, but ultimately it didn't evaluate or didn't evolve, in this way. So here again, we made an MVP, again, 1,700 hours. So from Songflow, I did manage to cut the MVP in half, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was a MVP. I don't think so. The original system we built had really a lot of options with specific pricing and exceptions and rules and a whole engine to be able to make these forms, to be able to categorize and calculate how much work and how much money the service that your PA would do would cost. Well, that was a lot of work to build this. After the original, it pivoted. The company pivoted to become Fetch Amsterdam. And then basically they throw away all this whole rule-based engine of calculation, and it became a free-form request. So basically, threw away all the hard work we did because it was overly complicated, and people wanted, customers just didn't want to use this. They wanted to have something much more easier. Again, this could and this should have been caught much more early if there would be a more lean process and capturing feedback. Then we might have been able to prevent this. So the development and the learning wasn't lean enough again. Ultimately, they did pivot into become Mr. Fix, and that's now still a company that is successful. It's operating, and there's, I believe, 8 types of work: plumbing and gardening and those kinds of things that they're supporting. And I think that's successful. So they did pivot and they did listen to feedback, but ultimately, in my opinion, it wasn't done in as fast enough and as frequent enough. So we did do the build, measure, learn loop, but iterations of quarter, 3-4 months we took to figure out what was next, and that's just not that's not fast enough. It should be literally months, maybe even weeks. And if you're small and if you're moving forward fast, it could be even days. All right, then to Brown Cow, the next one, the marketplace for senior experts. Due to the age buildup in large parts of Europe, there's getting a lot of senior experts stopping with their normal jobs and going with a pension, stopping work. And the idea was to create a marketplace for these senior experts. I co-founded this in 2012. Again, made an MVP from the 1,600-1,700 hours of the previous one. This is again almost half, so we're getting there, but still not done properly. So I did. Maybe I wasn't learning as fast as any of you guys would, but at least I learned from my mistakes, right? So the original idea was to have this marketplace, and it pivoted basically into a senior advice website where people could just ask questions and get answers for what they're for the phase they were in with their business. Again, kill your darlings. After 6 years, I just didn't deliver on the idea, on the plan, on the impact we wanted it to have. So we had to stop it. What I learned here, well, unfortunately, not all ideas turn into profitable businesses. Sometimes you just have to be lucky. Sometimes you have to adapt fast. Sometimes you just you cannot make it work. I think the problem here as well was there were no short development cycles, and the MVP, for instance, included a matching algorithm for the original, so that's a marketplace where supply and demand would be automatically matched with each other, and it took a lot of work to build this. And I think what I might do different now is I might have built a Wizard of Oz MVP, and that's something that Zappos also did. I think that's a great story from Zappos. Zappos, they are a shoe store online, but when they started, it was very uncommon to buy something over the internet, let alone having shoes which are surely personal, and you have to try them out before buying them. So it definitely was something they wanted to test. What they did, the founder, he went to random shoe stores, made pictures of shoes that were on sale, and then made it look like they are actually his shoes, his stock that he could sell, and basically faked the whole intelligence, the whole process, the whole logistics. He just bought the shoes there and shipped them themselves and got his feedback. But it did prevent him from spending a huge amount of money of building the whole platform before even figuring out if people wanted to buy his stuff. So that's a Wizard of Oz MVP, really interesting. If you've got an idea and you can make things manually, you can do things manually instead of spending a lot of money for technology, that might be a good way to reduce your cost and being lean about it. Right, so that was Brown Cow. Next is the new professional network, visual profiles and job interviews. So instead of having a resume, a CV, just in a Word document with maybe a picture or not, this would be short video you would make, and that would be the new version of your resume. That would be a great idea. So what co-founded in 2012. In this case, I think it was actually pretty much well done. The MVP in this case was only 100 hours. So what we did all the UI, the UX, we designed everything and just made one big slideshow PowerPoint. I believe actually it was a clickable HTML version, but regardless, it was not working at all, but it was definitely clear what we wanted to do with it. But unfortunately, we didn't meet with any market demands. So it wasn't a success. And well, maybe it wasn't, there was no market demand, or maybe there was no market exposure. Or maybe we just didn't have the learnings that we needed, or maybe we should have pivoted, which we didn't, or maybe just not enough efforts from our side. And In this case, I learned that the entrepreneurial spirit and the passion of the entrepreneur or entrepreneurs really makes a big difference. And in this case, it just wasn't after the first initial downturns and the negative feedback. That was it basically, and then we decided to move on. I think the pre-sell would have been very nice. I think if you can do a pre-sale, of course, it's super valuable to be able to get to make the decision based on if clients actually want to pay for what you're going to build. This was clearly not possible, and we decided not to continue with the build. The sniff test, I think, might have also indicated that it was a nice to have, not a must have or can't live without. So this unfortunately didn't have a long life ahead of it. All right, then MatsFinder, a different project, really interesting. I really very ambitious. It was a system where with serialization of packaging for medicine, we could actually authenticate and make sure that if people buy medicine, they have the original, the real, the authentic medicine that will actually help them. Co-founded this 2015. I did make an MVP properly. I believe it took 300 hours. That's not as little as I would have hoped, but sometimes there's no other way. And in this case, that's the first point of the learned. Sorry, the second point of the learned. So the chicken and egg. Sometimes you just need to build something before people see and understand it. And in this case, our initial talks with big pharma companies indicated that well, they just wanted to see how things worked. They wanted to see if they could, if we could pull it off. They wanted to see if we could build up a network and have a user base. Well, and that was really tough. So the minimum in the MVP in this case was quite big because we needed critical mass, and that is very expensive. So take this into consideration. If you need to have a critical mass to be able to have any value for somebody who's going to pay for it, well, that's really tough. Maybe try to work on your business model, or maybe just decide that it's not worth pursuing. Again, here the entrepreneurial spirit, passion makes a big difference. I was the one pushing this, so maybe there wasn't enough market exposure. Maybe there wasn't enough learnings that I did. Maybe there wasn't. Maybe I didn't pivot, and maybe I just didn't put enough efforts into it. But well, I don't think it's over yet, and I'm still very passionate about this project. So maybe sometime I'll be able to launch it. All right, then to the next one. How about sales? Broker relationship management. So not for CRM, customer relationship management, but for brokers, for intermediary channels. Co-founded this 2009. Originally, 2009 was a consultancy company with software for data collection. Pivoted into a software company with custom-made solutions. Then again, a few years later, we pivoted into a software as a service company for small and medium enterprises in Europe. And up until this point, there was no real entrepreneurial push. It was a side project. The founders, the three co-founders, the other two co-founders and me, the three founders, we all did this on the side. And I think it was great fun, and we did come quite far, but ultimately it really needs to be a passion. You really need to put your back into it, and that's what didn't happen. When we did actually, two of the three founders, we really pushed hard, and we pivoted again, and then made it a SaaS broker relationship management tool. We got nominated for the Startup of the Year 2017 in Belgium, which is great. We raised $2 million for to really roll out and to make it a commercial success. Well, unfortunately, that didn't really happen. I believe we spent a lot of money on sales too early. There wasn't a product market fit, so we did have something, but it just wasn't good enough. And when the sales guys couldn't sell it, of course, there's a question: is it the quality of the sales guys? Are they unable to sell it because they're bad sales guys, or is the product not ready? Well, I believe in this case the product just wasn't ready to sell as it was at that point. So we did spend a lot of money on this, and we're just too early with this scale up. Well, I think there's one nice quote. It's one swallow does not make a summer. Well, wisdom can be a few thousand years old. In this case, it's from Aristotle. And I think in this case, all our pivots were done based on the success of one or maybe two companies, but ultimately it just wasn't a market fit. So the product wasn't suitable for a whole market of buyers that wanted to buy our stuff. So that's what I learned in this case. Well, those were the different companies I was involved with and my experiences from these things. I think the learnings are next, of course. So the first one is about lean. You decide what is minimum, and the customer decides what is viable in the MVP name. So you'll have to really try to cut all the different costs. But ultimately, there's only one that decides if your product is viable, and that's the customer. And how will lean help you? Well, it helps you make the MVP efficiently, right? So a reduced version of your product, your real core features built with minimum effort. I think that's very important to create value for the people who will use it and contain core features only. There should be zero or very little wastage, as you will not create something that will not be used or that is not the core of what people want to pay you for, actually. You'll learn faster, as fast as you can, and probably outlearn your competition, which is really something that is important and helps you get to market sooner. And because you make the right choices, you spend your money, your budget on the right things, so you maximize your budget. And well, about the whole learn, measure, and build, well, you have to have informed and validated improvements, because you have user feedback. And if you look at the graph on the right, you see the cost versus flexibility. In the beginning, of course, you're very, very flexible of making changes, and it doesn't cost a lot. Of course, it's very hard to change your ideas and your opinion, but if you actually are able to convince yourself of something else, everything starts moving, and you figure out a great way to move forward with this, so it doesn't take any cost. And if you're already designing things, then it will be a little bit more costly. If you're already building stuff, if you have code, if you already have a sales team that sells it, it will become much more expensive to make those changes. So try to make the big changes as early as possible, and lean is a great way to help you capture this feedback that you need to make sure that you make the right choices and the right changes earlier on. Okay, then the next learning is about passion. I believe that as an entrepreneur, you will be the only one that will make a difference. You really have to work hard for it. You have to fight hard for it. You will have to keep things moving. As soon as you're not inspiring, you're not leading, you're not pushing, things will unfortunately slow down. It's definitely in the beginning of a lot of companies and startups. It's you that's going to make a difference, or your co-founder, or the earlier hire. So that's really you have to keep things moving. And you have to be resilient as well, because if you give up the first time anybody says no, then you'll definitely have a very short lifetime of your company. It's of course, it's a balance. If you're too stubborn to listen to people, that doesn't work either, but you'll have to accept your fair shares of no's before you get to your yes. Well, and you will probably create a reality distortion field, which I really, really love. And if you're being very passionate, very enthusiastic about what you're doing, I think people will start to believe in your reality as well, and enter your reality distortion field. And in that case, well, it thinks a lot of people will say yes, but you also need some naysayers sometimes. And that brings us to the next learning I have, and that's you'll have to find peers and critical fans. It's very hard, but you have to try to prove yourself wrong. Otherwise, try to find people to prove you wrong, not just because, but because there's proof. And if there's proof, then you'll have to change your opinion about it. And you have to be open to this feedback. It is super hard. It's really, really hard to be open to feedback, especially if it's negative. But it sure does help you think about it and improve yourself, which is of extreme value. You'll have to find critical fans. You need to find not only supporters, but just they have to be critical, because if you find somebody that wants the same as what you want, but is giving pushback, that will surely sharpen your opinion and your ideas, and that's very valuable. So those three learnings, I think, are again are very important. Use lean as a methodology. It will help you build the right things to provide value to the one that's ultimately going to pay for it. You have to be passionate, and you have to find peers, the critical fans, to make it a success. Well, thank you for your time. Currently, I'm working on new and lean, of course, startups. So that's very exciting, and I am also doing some advisory for different companies as well. If you have an idea and you want to bounce it off somebody, or you want to make it a bit more formal, please reach out, and I'm definitely happy to try to sharpen your ideas and help you progress. Okay, thank you very much.
That was wonderful, Robert. Thank you so much for the great lessons from your own real experiences with building products in companies. And thank you for your thoughts on how lean can be a benefit for startups. And I'm sure your thoughts are really motivating for the product owners out there. And now starts our question and answer session here. Attendees who want to raise their queries can feel free to enter their questions in the control panel. Either Lekha or Robert will answer your queries. Yes, we are waiting for the queries. Yes, Hidayat has a question like, how do I know if lean is the right business model for me? Who is going to answer, like Robert or Lekha?
Robert, can you take that? I think that would be really good from your experience.
Yeah, I think it's always right to go lean. I don't think there's any reason to not try to capture feedback and to learn from this. I think it's regardless of the industry, regardless of what your phase is, regardless of what you're trying to accomplish. I think getting feedback soon and have short loops is helping you move faster, and it's very valuable, not only for new players but also incumbent players that need to compete with new startups. So as far as my opinion is the two really lean is suitable for everyone.
We have a question from Ang here. The person asks, how can I know deeply about this lean?
Should I answer or Lekha?
Yeah. I think Robert, you should answer that. Yeah, the deep meaning about lean would come from people who've helped companies really on lean.
Yeah, but the question. Can you please repeat the question?
How can I know deeply about lean? That is the question.
Yeah. Okay. So I think if you want to inform yourself more, you'll just Google it. I think there's great books that you can find. Eric Ries is one of the writer that wrote a book on this. I forgot the title right now, but I think you'll find it, and that's very interesting. Yeah, I think there's on medium.com, there's a lot of things you can find. I think if you Google, it will definitely get you quite far. And then at some point, there are all kinds of meetups, and I think meetup.com is a good example where you'll find different people with different stages, different experience. And I'm sure that if you partake in a few events, you'll learn a few things that you need to be successful.
I hope that is answered. And there is one question from Eric asking, how can I ensure that my brand will not get hurt if my MVP is a failure?
Okay, that's very interesting. And Robert, I think I'll just try to answer that a bit, and you can also add your views to it. Yeah. All right. So,
Yes.
okay. All right. So this question, see, Lean again is all about, trying out, having short releases into the market, avoiding wastage, and making sure that you build a product that is what your customer needs. So yes, there's always a brand name over there, but like the lean philosophy says, I think um, failing earlier is better than going a long way and then finding out that your brand is not really giving in for what your customer needs. So even if you keep trying, I wouldn't say that it would be a failure, because lean is all about getting feedback in a regular interval. So if you are a good brand, a known brand, and you are in touch with your customers regularly for their feedback and try to get out products in the same way, there are, of course, aspects of products that would not be a success and some which would be. So in my opinion, I mean, there's, I think, real world examples are where you have the Google Assistant and on one side, and then you have the Amazon Echo. I mean, both of them do have the same functionality, but they're still both out there, and there are different consumers for them. So yeah, from my opinion, I think it would not really hurt your brand value if you follow the lean principles the right way. Robert, maybe you can add more to that.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I think it's if you really embrace lean and if you get enough feedback, well, you'll have to weigh it carefully. But ultimately, your failure shouldn't be as big as if you're just very stubbornly building something and launching it as a whole. Then you can have built something that is really really not a hit, but really a miss.
Sure.
So doing it lean makes it at least that the failure will be smaller and the reputation damage will be smaller. And apart from this, I think, well, all companies need to remain competitive, right? So if you're too afraid to fail, if you're too afraid to make mistakes, if you're just remaining at the status quo, some startup or some disruptor will come in and take your business away. So yeah, of course you can not experiment, but then you'll just slowly watch your brand or your product fade away. So I think the only way is to keep on trying and keep on improving yourself, and then I think lean is the best way to do it.
Thank you for clarifying that. And actually, questions are pouring in. Elsan is asking, what do you really want to see in an idea that you want to get involved and help? What do you really want to see in an idea that you want to get involved and help?
Okay, if I understand the question, is the question about how do you know when you need to get involved in an idea? What is it that you would see in an idea that will make you want to get involved? I hope I got that question right.
Yes, I think that is what is meant by that.
Okay, all right. I would say that, it's the first thing that I would say is that you would have a gut feel about the idea. But of course, don't always go just with the gut feel. There are a lot of different ways to validate the idea, even if it might seem very unique at the initial point. So before you really do decide to put in your efforts into the idea, take a few take some time to really validate the idea through all the lean principles that you've seen right now, and according to the initial feedback that you get from the market, you can take your call and decide on this. And again, like Robert said, it's always a close call. I mean, that there are always great products that come to the market, but for some reasons they kind of fizzle out. But you just need to find out the right wavelength of your customers, and that's how you'd really know if the idea has connected with them. Would you like to add something to that, Robert?
Yeah, I think that's your answer is quite good. For me personally, I think I think it really is a matter of starting and getting out there and trying to get feedback, trying to get challenging thoughts and changing your own opinion. And I think for me to get involved in something, it would be basically there has to be a clear idea, not just a vague. It has to be precise. You have to be able to pinpoint the pain. You have to basically done the sniff test, the whole MVP mountain, figure out what went wrong, what went right, and then ultimately you'll see that you found you struck gold, or it looks like it will be gold, or you pivoted a number of times that you actually found something that works. That is for me the most important. So I don't believe everybody has it right the first time. I think most companies are a success because they pivoted. So yeah, if you're willing to take this feedback and if you're willing to change your mind, that is in my opinion, it shows a lot of strength. So that would be a requirement that to actually actively pursue and trying to find people that disagree with you and to sharpen your product and your project instead of just only looking at the positive side. That I think that's a very big indicator of future success if you're willing to listen to feedback and be open for this.
And Elzan has one more question. I'll just read it out. The conditions that you want to put out in an idea and to be hired as a consultant to develop an MVP. Or maybe like a condition that you look for in a project or a company to be hired as a consultant to develop an MVP.
Robert, can you take that?
I'm not sure I understand the question fully.
Okay. Can you repeat the question again once more, Preeti? Let me try.
Yes. The conditions that you want to put out in an idea and to be hired as a consultant to develop an MVP. And he has reframed it like conditioning that you look for in a project or a company. Maybe to be hired as a consultant for MVP.
Okay, so I think it closely relates to the first question, where it's all about you making a decision if you want to join in to either a product or a company that works on a product. If I'm not wrong, it closely relates to the first question itself. So, I mean, of course, if it's a company that you're looking to, you can always look at the rate of success that they've had with previous products or the versions of their products. That's always one thing. And I think that's the most telling point that you would see from the company, and you can decide if you want to join as a consultant. And of course, you would all the answers that Robert and myself gave for the first question applies still. That you would not know if an idea is worth it until you drag it through all these steps, or at least the important steps in Lean. Yeah, I hope that answers your question, but if not, please do let us know.
I hope that is clarified. And we have a question from Basir is asking, is Lean only for small startups?
Robert, would you want to take that?
Yeah, that's fine. So no, I think if you want to be successful as a startup, you'll definitely need to think about this and take as much of the knowledge and the experience that people have with Lean to make it and try to apply it to your specific case. So as a startup, I think it's pretty much a must. And like I said before, I think for if you're not a startup, yeah, you should be thinking about what your client wants and what new features you need to build and what pain you're trying to take away and how much people are willing to pay for it. Of course, if you're a very static company and nothing is changing, well then you might go on as you are. But as I said before, I believe there will always be, if you're sleeping, somebody is more sharp than you and will take away your business. So regardless of size, I'm definitely 100% sure that there's elements of Lean that is applicable to anyone that wants to be a success.
Thank you. I hope that answer suffices. I hope that's all for the Q&A session now. Actually, we are keeping on getting more questions, but as we are nearing the time, we'd like to conclude the Q&A session. If you have any more questions, please feel free to reach out to us at info@bridgeglobal.com. And to the listeners, we hope you enjoyed the presentation and find it useful. And we will also be sending you the webinar recording via mail soon. I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for attending this webinar. And stay tuned. Have a great evening. Bye.